Czechast, a podcast in English about Czech and Moravian society, history, culture and economy.
Hello and welcome to Czechast, the podcast in English about all things Czech. In today's episode, we are talking about something that feels increasingly fragile across Europe. Democratic institutions, political responsibility, and whether we really understand the world we are living in. My guest is Tomáš Petříček, former Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs for Social Democrats, now an academic and advisor on foreign policy of the Czech President Petr Pavel, still very much engaged in the debate about where Czechia stands today. So, what does he say about the state of Czech politics?
First of all, it is not a role of a politician to interpret our constitution. That's why we have constitutional court. And to try to delegitimize independence of the Supreme Court in our country is quite dangerous. I think that we have a separation of powers for some reasons. And the judiciary needs to stay independent from the political influences and political interference.
Strong words, and they come at a moment when questions about the limits of presidential power and constitutional norms are once again part of Czech public debate. But Petříček also reflects on something deeper. After years inside politics, what did he actually learn?
Politics is about compromise. And that's probably also frustrating, because people want that what they expect from politicians will be 100% met by politicians.
And it never is.
But it is never the case, because you have to compromise. Our society is very diverse. We have different interests, different opinions on everything.
So, compromise, not victory, not purity, not slogans. And then there is the bigger question, the one that has defined Europe for the past several years. Do Czechs fully understand what Russia's war against Ukraine really means for them?
I think we are struggling with it still. Even after almost 4 years of high-intensity conventional war in Europe, we have people among us that believe that it is not our problem, that we are not facing any serious threat. That if we sell Ukraine, we might live in peace. I'm afraid that it's illusion.
In this episode of Czechast, we explore what Czech democracy is facing today, from constitutional tensions to political compromise, from Euroscepticism to security risks in a changing Europe. My name is Vít Pohanka, and this is Czechast with Tomáš Petříček.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.
Right. If you were to introduce yourself in a few sentences, who are you, what do you do? What would you say?
I'm at the beginning of a new career path, actually, and I'm a former politician / practitioner. At the moment, I feel being more and more somebody deeper into academics, Czech academic and European academic, and I'm somebody who loves international relations, international economic issues, and geopolitics.
You are from Rokycany, right?
Right.
From Western Bohemia, now Plzeňský kraj. What drew you to international issues, to politics? Rokycany is a small town. I'm from a small town.
I'm from a small town. Honestly, it was not planned when I was studying high school in Rokycany that I would go for, let's say, politics, international affairs. I was much more attracted by natural sciences, environmental issues, which to some extent stick to me. But I decided to study political science and international relations. It was also based because I love history. I always love to read about history from different parts of the world, and the academic, intellectual curiosity probably also led me to think about how politics works in real life, in real world, and more I was attracted by foreign policy, and ever since my studies, I really focus on the issues of international relations.
And right you are, because I think we might have met between 2006, 2007 when I was in Brussels and I was going to the European Parliament to the monthly plenary sessions in Strasbourg. So how did you get the job? What did you do, first of all, to explain to the listeners?
I used to work. I started as a trainee. It was like typical European opportunity-seeking young student who, first of all, looked for Erasmus. So I went to Erasmus, to probably not the most attractive Erasmus place, Brussels, to study at the Université Libre de Bruxelles. And at the same time, I was already active in Young Social Democrats. I was starting to look around the Czech politics, and I met with Libor Rouček, one of the first Czech MEPs, and he agreed that I can be a trainee at the political group of Social Democrats in the European Parliament. It was my first experience with real politics.
How was it?
It was great, and I have to admit that it was first serious working experience for me, but at the same time it was the beginning of network of friends, people I'm in touch ever since. And for example, one of the trainees from 20 years ago already is now an influential Dutch MP. I have friends who are back in Greece doing politics or in Scandinavia. So yeah, that's nice to see that we grew up, we getting older, and at the same time we can stay in touch and meet from time to time, either at conferences or at some political gatherings.
We will get to your kind of journey from a trainee in the European Parliament to becoming the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Czechia in a relatively short time, I think some 10 years. I mean, if I'm saying roughly within one decade.
A little bit more than.
Yeah. But let me ask you first, last question about your work at the European Parliament. When I was there as a journalist, what I felt was a frustration, because I felt that the issues that are being dealt with are very, very important. But you know, in the media, it's quite kind of difficult quite often to explain very complex issues when you've got 3 minutes, you know, to talk about it, etc. What did you kind of learn working, you know, in such an environment, trying to explain it to people why it matters?
Have you ever found the answer to this question yourself? Look, what I learned, first of all, that politics is about compromise. And that's probably also frustrating, because people want that what they expect from politicians will be 100% met by politicians.
And it never is.
But it is never the case, because you have to compromise. Our society is very diverse. We have different interests, different opinions on everything. Be it at the local level, in your town, in your city, even in your neighborhood, or at the national level, and not to say about European Union. European Union is, above all, a group of, at the time, 28. It was before the enlargement, actually, so it was less member states, but now it's 27 member states. You have to compromise between member states, between different parts of our society, on all the issues, from economic, social issues to now more and more international issues, geopolitics. It is about compromise. And compromise is difficult to reach, to accept, and to explain. Because compromises are probably not as popular as a landslide victory.
Yeah.
But that's possible maybe in sport, not in politics.
So, to you now, how did you become Minister of Foreign Affairs from being a trainee?
I never expected to be a minister. It was not kind of like I have a plan. No, I never had a kind of plan that I would like to be a member of the government. It was to some extent issue of accident, issue of luck. I have been quite active in young social democrats, so youth politics, youth movement. I was having good cooperation with many influential Czech politicians before I really get into practical politics myself. And you probably know that I was not the first pick for being a minister. It was also, which is quite relevant for contemporary current discussions in our country. I was a substitute for somebody who
wasn't accepted by the then President Zeman.
Exactly.
Who refused to
nominate,
to appoint him there.
To nominate my friend, and after it was clear that he is not going to be nominated, my party, where I was already quite well established, and they knew that I was one of the experts on foreign policy, nominated me for this position.
By the way, I mean, speaking of that, what do you think about the present discussion when the present president, Petr Pavel, has got a problem with one of the nominees for a ministry? And we are hearing, he's out of bounds, I mean, constitutionally speaking, when the same people actually were saying that it's completely all right when President Zeman did that.
You're right. I haven't heard the same people who are now criticizing our president to speak out a couple of years ago that President Zeman is out of the bound of Czech constitution. And I think that it is a regular appearance of Czech. It's politics. It's quite a regular case in our political system that president, even though is not having super strong execution powers, is trying to influence the Czech politics, even in this area. And I'm quite surprised that even though there are so many hassles around these issues, that nobody is using the institutional instruments, legal instruments we are having. We have still the opportunity the government has the opportunity to appeal to Constitutional Court to clarify the competencies of the president. But ever since our first president, Václav Havel, nobody really get the idea to use it.
I'm afraid I will have to step into it. Minister Matzinka, Minister of Foreign Affairs, in this respect said that, of course, it's not useful for them to ask the Constitutional Court to decide, because obviously President Pavel has nominated his own judges there. So in a way, he raised doubts about the impartiality of Constitutional Court, which is one of the obviously key pillars of constitutional democracy in Czechia. What do you say to that?
First of all, it is not a role of a politician to interpret our constitution. That's why we have Constitutional Court. And to try to delegitimize independence of the Supreme Court in our country is quite dangerous. I think that we have a separation of powers for some reasons. And the judiciary needs to stay independent from the political influences and political interference. If a member of the government is questioning this independence, I think it is also raising a lot of questions among normal people. Are the courts independent then? I think it's a quite dangerous for politicians to go this way. But if I can also return back to and try maybe also to compare what happened before I was nominated a minister.
When was it? 2000?
It was 2018.
2018 already.
Already some 8 years ago, almost 8 years ago. I think there are also differences. Like in case of President Zeman, it was very personal animosity with specific people. To explain the context, President Zeman, even though he left Social Democratic Party, he was very critical with some people in the Social Democratic Party, and it was very personal criticism. It was not about political issues.
Was not about competencies.
It was not about legal issues, not even about competencies. It was only about like personal animosity, which is quite different from what President Pavel is now saying. He's clearly saying he is here to also protect the constitutionality. It's his role. And if there is somebody who might be having a reputation to have quite a specific relationship with Czech legal system, with Czech law, he cannot nominate him. And I think this is different. This is a qualitative difference between what's happening now and what was happening in the past.
Just in case some of the listeners might not be following even the English broadcast of Radio Prague International, the argument is that, the point of, I would say, argument is that President Pavel refuses to appoint Mr. Filip Turek, the nominee of the Motorists Party, who obviously, allegedly, published pro-Nazi, racist, very kind of hateful posts on social networks, which became public knowledge only a few months ago. And now police started looking into it. I mean, police is looking into it. I don't want to say that he's been officially charged with anything. So just for the context. But I wanted to ask you, since you were young Social Democrats, I suppose you came together with people from many other countries, like you mentioned, I mean, already your Dutch friends, etc. But I'm more interested in Poland and Slovakia now, because they are our neighbors. We've got a lot of common history. And I happened to be a Czech radio correspondent in Poland in 2015 when the Právo i Spravedlivost, so Law and Justice Party, won the elections. And they were going through a process, I would say, which could be compared to the process that Czechia is now going through. Do you think, I mean, is it relevant, I mean, to compare it? I think it is, but I would be interested, to hear what you have got to say about it.
I believe it's worth of learning more about what happened in Poland in the past, what happened in Hungary in the past. I think that our political system is a little bit more robust. I believe our political system is more robust to prevent potential institutional changes that might undermine our liberal democracy, our constitutional democracy, independence of courts or independence of justice, freedom of media, and so on. But we should be aware about that in very similar circumstances, changes that are hard to reverse, and we see it still in Poland, it's still hard to reverse them, happened, and to prevent maybe what happened in Poland here in Czechia. You mentioned that I was also in contact with, and indeed I was, and I still have a lot of friends in Poland, surprisingly more in Poland than in Slovakia, I would say, who are now senior representatives of the government in Poland, and I see how difficult it is to turn the wheel,
to go back to
for example,
state kind of the institutional order. If it's not
to, for example, solve the issue of Polish justice in a way that it fully meets the expectations of fully meets the principles of rule of law, that there is still resistance from opposition, that the Polish president also having its influence on how the government can effectively make some reforms. So it is difficult, especially in societies we are right now having more and more fragmented. We are speaking a lot about polarization. I think that the polarization has been always present with us. we have different interests in the society, as I already said. But the ability to find kind of like common ground is getting weaker, and in Poland we see it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely right. But just for the listeners, we were talking a little bit, chatting before we, started recording about France and whether the polarization there perhaps is not as dramatic as it was in the 1930s. Quite recently, it just reminded me, because this is Czechast, this is about Czechia, and I started reading some old newspapers from the 1920s, 1930s, from Czechoslovakia. I mean, gosh, if we are talking about polarization now, then it was fragmentization, if nothing else, because even social democrats were divided between the Czech-speaking social democrats, German-speaking democrats.
And then communists split from the Czechoslovak social democracy in the 1920s. So it was already fragmenting. The society is always integrating, fragmenting under external conditions. And it is nothing new. It's good to know about your own history. It's good to know about your neighbor's history, because, I think...
It's good to be aware of that, yeah?
Good to be aware about opportunities, but also about the risks we might be facing.
Yeah. Because after the 20s and 30s, there was Second World War.
Terrible World War II came.
Speaking of wars, Russia has been... I don't even want to say fighting in Ukraine. Russia has been mercilessly pounding Ukraine.
Terrorizing.
For 4 years now. And let me again bring about a personal memory. I interviewed you as a Minister of Foreign Affairs in January 2020, just before COVID. Before COVID started, and I actually interviewed you for a program where I was dealing with the Czech attitude towards the Russians, and we were talking. I just remember that, but we were talking about Russia, how people view it and do not view it. Did you have an inkling as a foreign minister then, that it would come to this?
Not to what we are seeing right now. I think. I was aware about the threat Russia represents for Europe, for Ukraine especially. It was already 6 years of conflict that was taking place on Ukraine territory. We shouldn't forget that the war didn't start in February 2022. It started in 2014 already. And I was in Ukraine before, and I was quite aware that Russia is not happy with the arrangement, political and security arrangement we are having in Europe. Russia is a revisionistic power. It sees itself that it's equal to powers that are not probably respecting Russia, even though we can discuss in length whether it was a legitimate position of Russia or not. But I think what was clear, Russia represented already in 2020 a huge risk for European security. We already saw that Russia was using a lot of tools to undermine our societies, from disinformation, which already at the end of previous decade emerged as a new threat to our democracy, economic instruments to undermine our cohesion, hybrid operations, as we only later came to realize, economic coercion. That was already in the toolbox of Russia. I was not aware at the time that we might be facing a conflict of this scale and intensity. I think it seemed to me irrational in 21st century to try to achieve political goals, as Clausewitz is saying that war is just only extension of political struggle. So to try to get some political gains by using large-scale military conflict, I saw it as irrational. But we now see that it's not about rationality any longer.
And to be fair, I mean, you are far from alone, I mean, in that thinking, because very few people really took that threat that seriously, that something like that would happen. From what you see around yourself now in Czechia, do you think at least that the lesson has been learned? I'm not saying that we are now more ready to, withhold the aggression or something. But do you think, even given the results of the elections, that people in general are aware, of this situation, fully aware where the threats come from?
I think we are struggling with it still. Even after almost 4 years of high-intensity conventional war in Europe, we have people among us that believe that it is not our problem, that we are not facing any serious threat, that if we sell Ukraine, we might live in peace. I'm afraid that it's illusion. We need to be ready for a world which is different. We got used to long period of exceptional, peaceful, and prosperous time in Europe. That makes Europe a little bit different than the rest of the world, which hasn't experienced this long period. And I'm not speaking only about the last, let's say, 30 years until 2022. I'm speaking about most of the post-World War period, where Europe was relatively peaceful and relatively calm and prosperous. It is difficult to change your attitudes. I do understand it. But if we are not ready to accept that our society needs to be more prepared to defend itself, needs to accept that there are powers that are not thinking anything good for us, we might be just only a victim of our lukewarm approach to our security.
I know that, of course, it's good to quote polls, but I know that usually situation is slightly different. I wouldn't want to rely solely on polls, but why I mentioned that in such a kind of clumsy way, it was only yesterday that a poll was published by Eurobarometer, I think. And again, Czechia is one of the most Eurosceptic countries of the whole of EU. Why is that?
I don't know. I think to some extent it is, and that's my interpretation. That's not that I have data or I can rely on on some sociological research or some psychological profiling of Czech society. But I think we are to some extent a country or nation that is a bit isolationist in nature, that we are looking at the world, seeing it as a kind of like dangerous place, and we would rather love to enjoy the peace and quiet of our Czech landscape, which is also maybe characteristic. We don't have high mountains, we don't have sea. Maybe it is part of the story how our mentality has been shaped. I love this parable with hobbits from Tolkien, but to some extent, the big affairs of the world are not our problems, and the same applies to Europe. The big affairs of Europe are not our problem, so we usually see it as something external, even though we are part of it. And that's still remaining there. It's kind of like feeling we are not part of Europe. This is kind of like, we live in Europe, but this is something happening elsewhere. At the same time, I think that Czech Euroscepticism is not as strong as it might looks from the polls.
That's exactly what I mean.
If you look at, for example, to add, but if you look at, for example, the issue of trust, like which institution Czech people trust, they don't trust any institution, even national institution. It is not about EU only. It is about generally, I would say, negative approach to public public sphere, to politics, to political institution, which is also a problem when it comes to how we are able or how we develop our capacity to influence European politics. We are to some extent fencing ourselves from what the big issues in Europe, and they have an impact on us, and we cannot just pretend that nothing is happening. We need to be part, I would like to say, part of the solution, not part of the destruction. Part of the solution, how to make Europe effectively addressing all the challenges we are facing, from economics, social problems, new technologies, and security. Yesterday, we also saw other figures. Nearly 90% of Europeans, I don't know how it is in Czechia, but nearly 90% of Europeans believe that the only way forward is more united Europe. Mm-hmm. Europe that sticks together.
That's right, yeah, that was there as well.
So everyone except one intense believe that we need to work closely together as Europeans, because otherwise we are too small to, I wouldn't say survive, we will survive, but to prosper in a world that is becoming more dangerous.
I recently interviewed Vladimír Bár of Ostrava University. Mm-hmm. He's a political geographer, just for the listeners, former rector of the Ostrava University. And he was mentioning very interesting figures, how the share of the EU share in world economy, how it's lagging behind. Since 2010, he was giving precise figures. You can check it. You can Google it quite easily. Europe is losing. It's not that it's not power anymore. It's still one of the most powerful blocks, the biggest economy in the world. But it's losing, gradually. I will ask you, what should we do about this? Work more closely, of course, but obviously there's a difficulty. There are different interests, etc. What would be your formula? I'm sorry that I'm laughing like this. But, I know the absurdity of the question. I understand, but where do you see the possibilities?
I think first, stop panicking. You rightly said Europe is still one of the most important economies in the world, one of the biggest economic blocks in the world, technologically advanced. In many areas, we are not losing even with the biggest competitors, be it China, but mainly United States. We like to look at the GDP, how American GDP is growing, or at least remaining or keeping its share of the world economy, while the European economy is slowly shrinking. And not only because we lost UK, which is also the fact that in the statistic you doesn't understand also that the UK is not counted now, which is a big economy. We are discussing a lot in Europe about so-called Draghi report. Very often we forget that there is a second report from Enrico Letta, former Italian Prime Minister. And Enrico Letta actually said quite pertinently that in most areas, European and American economy is doing this, depends how your perspective, as well or as badly. Mm-hmm. The productivity growth in most sectors is very similar in European and American economy. Whereas the difference is the big tech, digital technologies, AI. That's what is making the difference between EU and US. And our financial systems are not delivering in the same way. I think that's where we have two major weaknesses in Europe. How to integrate new technologies in our societies, how to use them, and at the same time, how not to undermine the European way of life. Because I think we are not going to turn into America, and I think we don't want to turn into American society, or second American society. We don't want to be a clone of America. We have different approach to business, especially when it comes to technologies. We will see maybe in 10 years whether we were right or Americans were right. But I think that's also good to think about the risks at the same time when thinking about opportunities. I think the different approach might be, let's rebalance thinking about both opportunities and risk at the same time, because Europeans over the past decades turned more to the preventing the risks than trying to exploit the opportunities. That's probably one issue. And the second, I think we need to make very substantial changes when it comes to, for example, how we are using capital, how taxpayers' savings are put in work, not in America, but here in Europe. And it's again about we need to complete a single market, for example. We need to create a European capital market. We need to have a European banking union. Everything, most of the critics of Europe right now are saying, no, we don't want it. We don't want more integration. We don't want this. And that at the same time, Europe is gloom and doomed. And I see this hypocrisy in this as well. So I'm saying, it is not a gloom and doom. The IMF chief, Georgia, very simply said, don't stop this gloom and doom mentality or this approach that Europe is doomed. It is not. You have some of the fastest growing advanced economies, rich economies are in Europe. You have still technology to tap. You have talent, you have capital. It is not doomed. I think it's about some changes in our approach and again, working together.
You now work with young people, right?
And I like it.
I was just going to ask you, I mean, does that give you hope? Is there a difference there, you think?
I'm having hope. I hope that I'm also explaining why I'm not panicking or saying that we are doomed here in Europe. We have a lot of talented people here. We need to create an environment where they really use it, where they can be less afraid of failure. I think that's our problem, especially here. I have a feeling
the fear of failure is
here, and I had an interesting debate with some American partners, actually from very conservative circles, and we came at the end that I'm more to the left. I would be probably much closer to American Democrats than for sure to American Republicans. But we at the end came to conclusion that it's not about issues of welfare state or social system, taxes. It's mainly about how dynamic the society can be as a whole. And Europeans, and that's that I have to admit, we want to prevent risk, we want to be insured against risk, while Americans are much more keen to take on risks, because they know that without risk there is no benefit, there is no growth, there is no dynamics without taking some risk, and therefore they are more in they have strategy to hedge, so they accept the risk is there. So they are rather looking how to diversify, how to, if something happens, that doesn't mean that it is catastrophe. And for example, it's easy in American society to fall and stand up again, and it's more difficult here. I think it's also about necessarily only like regulation, but it's also about us, about people, how we look at ourselves, what are our expectations from our life, and how ready we are to take some risks. And maybe not to be afraid that if we are not successful, that the rest of the society will only judge us.
Just on a similar note, some time ago I interviewed someone from the Czech, I think it was Czech Chamber of Commerce, or was it the Association of Industry, Trade and Transport, something like that. Well, what I wanted to mention is, we were talking about whether Czechia has got Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is in the United States. I mean, if you go bankrupt as a company, you get protection. You kind of try to restructure so that you are able to pay. And Czechia, until I'm not quite sure which exactly year, didn't even have that. And I think we have that now, don't we?
We have.
Yeah.
Finally, we have it. So it's easier to go for this individual bankruptcy. Until recently, it was possible only for legal entities, for companies.
For companies.
Not for individuals. Which was also
I just
an issue
mentioned that because it seems to me to be a kind of nice illustration, nice example, of the thinking, of the society as such. I mean, you go bankrupt, you are bad, you are finished. Yeah.
Yeah, that is still present, honestly.
And it's good to know that.
It is still present in the society. Like people are afraid that not only about the financial side, but also social side. How people will react.
How they will be judged.
How people are able to judge others. And it might take time, but you ask me how is it about working with young people? It's great because there is a chance that we will not just replicate the same patterns with young generation. That we need to explain them. It's okay to fail. You know it. You read it in books. Without failure, there is no success. Without really hitting the wall, you cannot find a way around the wall. And it is, I think, even more complicated in the post-communist countries where kind of like failure is not accepted. Learning by doing is kind of like quite new thing. But I see a lot of talent in the young people and a bit different mentality as well, different approach. They are much more ready to take some risk, and I think they need to be only encouraged. I hate these discussions about, like, for example, Gen Z and how they are not looking for like hard work and so on. It's not true. I think that they're more ever maybe about like, okay, what is important in life that for them who grew up on social media and in virtual world, that social relations are so important. That it's not only about work, but they are looking for new balance. But as part of this new balance, it can be also that it's okay to fail. It's okay to take risk. It's a desire to show that what you want, that you can be encouraged even to really think big, be ambitious. Even though sometimes it might be not realistic, but without thinking big, we wouldn't have successful people.
Are you thinking about going back into politics? You are young.
I'm young. No, I'm getting older as well. I see it when I'm meeting my students that I'm getting older and older. In politics, never say never. That's my first experience and first lesson I would share with the listeners. At the moment, I have other priorities, but doesn't mean that I'm not interested about what is happening in my country, what is happening in Europe. And honestly, politics, we are all part of politics. It's not that I'm not political. I am voting, I'm advising some people who are active in politics. And as a teacher, as a scholar, I'm expressing my opinion about public affairs, so I'm still partly in politics.
Tomáš Petříček, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
And I hope to see you again soon.
I'll be happy.
Tomáš Petříček, former Czech foreign minister, now academic and advisor on foreign policy to President Petr Pavel, reflecting on democracy, compromise and the realities of a changing Europe. If you enjoy Czechast, please don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with your friends and explore many more stories about Czechia at radio.cz. Thank you for listening. I'm Vít Pohanka. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious, and as we say in Czech, naslyšenou.
Czechast, a podcast in English about all things Czech. Whether you're an English-speaking expat living in Czechia and Slovakia, or a descendant of the Czechs, Moravians and Slovaks who left for a better life in America, Australia, Britain or Canada so long ago that you don't speak the language of the old country, this podcast in English is for you.